Hey everyone, Kitsuragi here, and in this video we're going to be going over an exclusive interview on Armored Core 6 coming from the man himself, Miyazaki, and of course Yamamura, who is going to be directing the game. So the first little bit is just kind of their overview of everything, talking about how the president, Miyazaki, which I didn't know he was the president, talking about how where he got his start, everything like that. And then talking about, that we're going to have Sekiro's director, Yamamura, being the director of Armored Core 6. So that's pretty much the little fluff stuff on that. I want to actually get more into the interview questions themselves. We've got some nice screenshots. You guys can go check this out over on IGN. Of course, I am going to put a link to my old Armored Core video talking about the interview with Miyazaki about what he was planning on the next game being and going over some of the stuff. And you can kind of see some correlations between the questions answered and that in those two different videos. So let's get over and let's take care of this and see what's going on and get some information. All right, before we actually get into the information and everything like that, I do want to state I'm going to take some pauses. I'm going to talk about what I think, we can expect from some of this stuff coming up and what they're saying. They have condensed this to make it very clear of what they're talking about, but my speculations of what we will be seeing in Armored Core 6 from what we're getting from these questions and these answers. So let's go ahead and start off. Miyazaki-san, I understand that you're more of a concept creator for this game. Can you talk about how this project came to be and the direction you want to take it in? Let's see. I think a more accurate way to put it would be that I was part of the initial game direction on the project, not necessarily a concept creator. What that means is, as initial game director or part of the initial game direction team, I worked with several other people on the early stages of the project, including engineers, designers, and other people at the director level, production level, so we could define an early concept of the game, the early designs. More specifically, I involved myself and our line producer here, Kenneth Chan. He was working with me on the early stages of the project, as well as one of our members from the team, and eventually we passed over to Matsuru Yamamura, who joined us today as well. And he became the new director on this project. Pretty much one of my things I'm going to state, I think Miyazaki has been working on this, again, peeing in all of the pre-production and everything. He's been working on this since Dark Souls 3. Simple as that. I think that's where this comes in. He's been planning it and getting it already since Dark Souls 3. And then he worked on Elden Ring. But since Yamamura was working on Sekiro, as soon as Sekiro was done, he passed the project to Yamamura because he saw what kind of work he can do and wanted to make sure it was in good hands. So that's a good thing there. Is it fair to say that Armored Core will be closer to a soulsborne game than the series has been in the past? It's a good question because I know a lot of people are going to wonder what it's going to be like. This is a long response. No, we've been making a conscious effort to try to direct it towards more soulsborne type gameplay. First of all, let me just make that clear. That is just a confusing sentence. I think what he's trying... never mind. I'm not going to... the essential direction of Armored Core 6 was to go back and take a look at the core concept of Armored Core and what makes the series special. So we wanted to take the assembly aspect, assembling and customizing your own mech, your AC, and then being able to extract a high level of control over the assembled mech. So we want to take those two core concepts and re-examine those in our modern environment. And of course, What that means is taking our know-how and experience from game development in recent years and applying the knowledge and development of Armored Core 6 and re-examining it together with those core concepts of Armored Core. So the real impetus for this project, I think, or at least one of the real appeals for me comes from the aspect of assembly, being able to freely assemble and customize the mech. I think is what really highly focus on in Armored Core. And having mechs or mecha as a theme, it's really about that high level of freedom, adjusting each individual part gives, and how that affects gameplay and the properties of your mech actually in combat. We think it's a little bit more liberating than, say, just swapping out armor and equipment. There's actually a much higher degree of freedom here, and being able to see those effects in both in game and as part of the world building and as part of your player choices, we feel like this is a very big part of what makes Armored Core special. All right, so from this one, it's kind of giving us what we expect. We're going to be able to customize our mechs how we want to, create the ACs how we want them. But what it sounds like he's going to do is, I think 4 and 5 had this aspect where you could kind of like alter your parts a little bit, kind of boost them and reduce them a little bit so they can do certain things. I can't remember 100%. It's been so long since I played those games, which we'll be going through them eventually here soon. But that means he wants to pay a little more customization, a little bit heavier focus on the customization of the ACs, which is going to be a good thing. That's going to be a really good thing. But I think that's where some difficulty is going to come in for people. But we'll see what else they say about this. Let's continue on. Yamamura-san, you were the lead designer on Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Can you talk a little bit about the lessons you learned from that project and how you're applying them to Armored Core? Okay. There are no elements directly referring to Sekiro, but I feel both titles share the same essence of battle such as aggression, speed change, and action-oriented fighting. For this title, by continuing to attack even the strongest enemy, the force of impact can break the enemy's posture and inflict a large amount of damage, critical hit. This is the starting point for the slow and fast speed change of battle. And when we combined with long-range firefighting and close-range melee combat, the enemy and his machine engage each other violently, creating a more aggressive and dynamic battle that only mechs can engage in. Sorry for the stuttering in there. Horrible about reading. But pretty much what he's saying is, no, there's not going to be a lot of similarities, but this entire point here about continuing to attack even the strongest enemy to force the force of impact and break the enemy's posture and inflict a large amount of damage. Pretty much what it sounds like is they're going to focus a little bit on that, hitting a certain body part could essentially do a lot more damage to the mech, causing you to do more damage to that mech and knocking them off balance or not being able to use that weapon correctly or more accurately. That's what it kind of sounds like they might be doing, but in an overall thing is just kind of, you look at, you're being very aggressive, and that's what they want. They want that game to be very aggressive or highly aggressive when you're going into everything. Next questions. So it sounds like you're incorporating some kind of counter mechanic to Armored Core 6, maybe similar to what was in Sekiro. Rather than calling it a counter mechanic, what we want to stress is this reason to continue attacking and to continue on the offensive. You can create a chance for yourself in combat and turn the battle to the player's advantage. So what we feel is going to create a really nice back and forth flow in battles in Armored Core 6 and create a nice mix of offensive and defensive play but we really want players to feel like they're constantly able to pressure the enemy, and that's why we incorporated some of these systems. Okay, so they're talking about posture and breaking and like a counter type of system. Um, what makes me think, again, it makes me feel like they might be adding in not necessarily like a posture like they had in Sekiro, but more of AC's parts take damage. They are going to cause something that, makes your enemy or your mech move slower because you took too much damage to the legs. You're not as accurate with your right arm because it got blasted too much. Your head gets damaged, so your lock-on features don't work correctly. And sometimes you can lock onto an opponent, sometimes you can't. Or if it gets terribly damaged, you can't use missiles at all to lock on. So you're blind firing them. That's what that kind of sounds like that they might be adding into this, which is actually really cool. I've always wanted to see Armored Core have more of a like damage feature to the games. So can't wait to see what more we get from that. Anyways, let's continue on with this interview. What does it look like in the context of Armored Core being more about guns and missiles than, for example, Sekiro, which was more about swords, a single sword, but whatever. Of course, Armored Core has melee weapons, but often they've only been an option versus the many different range of options that you have with the mechs in Armored Core, or range options. Wow. That was a bad read on that. I apologize. Yes, you're correct in saying that Armored Core is generally about the guns and ordnance and missiles. So we want to cater to that aspect this time as well. Of course, we have various weapons for various ranges and various encounters, both in the two hands and on the back, as well as for missiles and cannons and things like that. But we wanted to put an emphasis on melee as well, so players are this way inclined. We do have some nice melee options if you want to dive in there and get close quarters combat as well. Pretty much something we've always known. We've always had good melee weapons in the game. A lot of people are like, well, they're not super great. The beam blades have always been great. And then, of course, in later games, they gave us the pile drivers, which were just spiked melee weapons. You had to get really close, but they did heavy damage. And the blades usually did pretty good damage as well. So overall, if just from this, sounds like they're keeping to the core aspect of Armored Core. You have a lot of range and you have some melee options. And those melee options are going to work just as well as those ranged when they hit. Miyazaki-san, Elden Ring increased accessibility. For example, friendlier checkpoints and friendly summons was credited with improving itself. What was your takeaway? So this is an Elden Ring thing. Probably leads into other questions. We'll see. Yes, one of our objectives when creating Elden Ring and creating this new open field style was offering more freedom in approaching accounts and more player freedom in general. This was a concept that we had in mind when approaching that game. And we hoped that this would open it up to more people and more players. We didn't want to lower the level of challenge or dumb it down. So we wanted to increase the level of freedom. We wanted to introduce more people to the style of game and wanted more people to enjoy that. So I don't know personally if it was successful or if it had a hand in that, but that's what we set out to do, and it was. And that's a very good point. It did help them out a lot. It did bring it to more of the masses, and like I've said in my review for Elden Ring, this is literally the easiest soulsborne game that you could play. So if you've not tried it, it did win Game of the Year, and it's definitely worth a play. So go check it out. And how did you apply these lessons to Armored Core 6? So we didn't necessarily take the same approach with the game design and with that core concept when developing Armored Core 6. When we set out to reboot the Armored Core series, we focused on the two concepts that we touched on earlier, that being the assembly aspect and the piloting aspect. So I feel like it was a very different approach right from the offset, but I think perhaps Yamamura can answer that a little bit more clearly. So essentially it's not going to be the same development process as Elden Ring. You should have figured that one out, which isn't too bad. Let's see. You've both been at FromSoftware for more than 10 years. How has its approach to game development changed? Because I would say that FromSoftware, when it was making Armored Core 5, this was between Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2. Armored Core 5 was a very experimental multiplayer game. And then when I look at Elden Ring, for example, it's a large-scale AAA open-world game. So it seems to me that FromSoftware's approach to game development has changed a little bit. Basically, I'm curious how the studio has evolved. Don't mind the Armored Core stuff. So actually during the development of AC5, I think both myself and Yamamura were working on Dark Souls 1. So there was a little bit of a different situation there. But in terms of how we've changed as a company, in terms of approach to game development, I think it's safe to say the team members and the resources we can put towards a game are very different now. Our level of know-how and the skill has obviously increased over the years developing these different games. So these are the main aspects that have changed in terms of the company and our approach. Our actual approach to game direction into the game development itself has not changed a great deal during that time. Like we said earlier, we wanted to take these original concepts of Armored Core and what we wanted to apply our modern day company and our modern day team members and know-how and expertise to these core concepts. And I feel we are able to capitalize more on that now and able to really make the game that we wanted to make. Actually, I was the director for 4 and 4 Answer, and of course, in those days, the level of resources and costs and the time that we could dedicate to game development was just a completely different ballpark. So I'm extremely jealous of the team today who gets to make this new Armored Core. I wish we had that sort of leverage back in the day. Of course, it does take time for studios to cultivate staff and learn and to grow, and I feel like we've used that time well. And I feel like this is the game that we are able to create now with the accumulated knowledge and with this team that has grown, but it also takes that praise and that support from the players themselves. If we didn't have the people playing and enjoying our games, then we wouldn't have come this far. I'm always extremely appreciative of that. So essentially what he's saying there, there has been a lot of development in FromSoftware. Now remember, this year, 2022, this is Armored Core's 25th anniversary, right? Yeah, 25th anniversary was this year. Miyazaki's been working on the Armored Core series since The Last Raven, which is part of Armored Core 3. I've been debating on, or talking about that in my head, trying to figure out which one it was, and it was 3. He was the director of 4 and 4 Answer, and he did not touch 5 because he was working on Dark Souls, which is why 5 is so vastly different from 4. His talk about this being jealous, game development has come so far, and FromSoftware has grown so much as a company that honestly, I'm happy that we're getting this now and not, Dark Souls 2 era Miyazaki, which still wasn't technically Miyazaki, but we won't go into that. Anyways, and they've been able to grow as a company and get more people to play their games that actually enjoy the games. So that's kind of the big thing there. And I really do respect Miyazaki because he's created something. Doesn't mean I always like all the games. Let's face it, I'll rage at every single Soulsborne game just because it's easy to do. But it doesn't mean I don't enjoy them because I'm a masochist in that aspect. Anyways, on to the next question. With so many more resources available to FromSoftware, what can you do with them for Armored Core 6 that you couldn't do before? Good question. I'd say, to give some specific examples, obviously the visuals, the level of expression we're able to achieve with the current studio and our current resources really lets us convey the visuals we want. Obviously, the mecha theme of Armored Core 6 means we're portraying these enormous hunks of steel, and we're supposed to imagine how these things would move, and how they'd be put together, the various joints, how these all sort of move in conjunction with one of another, and how we make this look cool in a gameplay sense as well. So this is something we're able to apply resources to. Obviously, the metallic texturing of these things, and the sound design as well, we're able to use Foley to get some realistic sounds to apply to these mechs. There are a lot of areas we are able to apply these resources and modern thinking as well. Alright, in this aspect, I mean, it's pretty obvious what it is. Now with the upgrade of technology and everything, they're gonna make this game look beautiful. Just stunning. So that there's not much to say. That's exactly what they're saying. They're able to make this game look amazing. I can't wait. Armored Core may not be trying to be a Soulsborne game, but does it have more of a Soulsborne essence than previous Armored Core games? And what does that mean for the series? When I think about Soulsborne essence, for example, I think of heavy combat, an air of mystery, exploration, difficulty, of course, a sense of darkness to the game. Naturally, Armored Core has always had an apocalyptic world, much like the Soulsborne games, but FromSoftware has embraced games like Bloodborne and Sekiro and Elden Ring and has moved in a particular direction. It seems natural, for example, for Armored Core to move away from mission-based structures from original Armored Core games and more towards an open-ended exploration that we've come to expect from the Soulsborne game. Alright, Miyazaki, how do you respond to that one? Alright. I think, first of all, speaking of those aspects, you mentioned the heavy combat, the air of mystery, the exploration, and the sense of darkness. I think rather than being typically Soulsborne, these are just things that are typical from software in general. These are things we've always sort of enjoyed and always prided ourselves on. We don't want to give away too much with storytelling. We always want to apply a certain level of challenge to keep it rewarding to the players. These are sort of general habits when it comes to game development. And these are generally things that I think we take from FromSoftware history, going back as far as Kingsfield. As for how younger developers and directors like Yamamura are taking these elements and rearranging them in Armored Core 6, I think this is something he cannot also answer separately as well. Personally, what I'm looking forward to is seeing how these, I think it directly applies to the element of heavy combat, I think you put it as. So how the players are how the player is able to apply themselves in combat and how the feel of the player movement in combat feels. I think that this is going to be something different when it comes to the mech themes and controlling these enormous machines. So I think this is something I'm looking forward to and something I hope players look forward to as well. Which, I mean, that's pretty apparent. This is an Armored Core game. They're always dark. There's always like heaviness of combat. It's very heavy in combat. Difficulty, there's always a difficulty. These games are known to have difficulty, not soulsborne difficulty levels, kind of. They can be pretty difficult. There are some missions that can be very difficult. But one thing that, he states in this, and it states earlier in this interview about their talking, that because Miyazaki's not hands-on directing this, he is, more of that producer style. He's taking a step back. He's more excited to play this as a fan than he is to direct it, which is why Yamamura-san is directing it. Okay. Anyways, why is FromSoftware drawn to apocalyptic settings? They're easy. Sorry. I would say there are two main reasons why we tend to move towards these apocalyptic settings. Man, can I speak? One is purely direct to taste, and that presence of game director and game developers. I think this is something that, again, has applied in FromSoftware history, as well as our previous CEO, Natoshi Zin. He directed the old Kingsfield and old school Armored Core games as well. So I think that's where that maybe stemmed from. My tastes happen to be similar, so I think that's why you see a lot of that in our modern Soulsborne titles as well. So it does depend on the director's taste and personal idiosyncrasies. I think the second reason would be, this is kind of a technical reason, but I say that a lively, bright setting is a little bit beyond FromSoftware's capabilities or experience as a developer. So it's easier for us to direct and apply our own resources on what we're good at and what we're used to. And so it's easier for us to express ourselves within these darker and drier and quieter apocalyptic settings than lighter and busy ones. That's pretty true. That's, again, very direct, very straightforward. Their personalities and how they like directing games, very dark. I mean, it's very true overall for all their games. Any FromSoftware game you play, usually dark or apocalyptic. And that, that's kind of their general development. I do actually enjoy their development and how things look. So that makes sense. Plus, I think it'd be a little weird if we had like a happy-go-lucky sunshine and everything's all good game comes from software. I think everyone would be really either off-put or questioning everything. I can see them doing it though. First portion of the game, be all happy, and then it goes apocalyptic. Oh, I could do that. I could see that. Really psych out the players. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. Alright. How much can you tell me about Armored Core 6's multiplayer? Yes, we do plan to have a versus mode similar to previous Armored Core titles, where you're able to customize your mech and take that fully customized mech into battle with others. But we will reveal more details about this at a later date. The main focus in AC6, on the story mode at least, is having a story develop and play out. We've concentrated on the single player for the story mode. Please stay tuned for more multiplayer details in a later date. That's, again, pretty straightforward. They are focusing on the single player aspect of this game. So it's going to be single player heavy, but there is going to be multiplayer aspects. We are going to have a versus mode. Is there going to be co-op missions? We don't know. We'll know more. And as soon as I know, well, you guys will know. Simple as that. All right. The moment in the trailer where there's a mech looking out over the horizon and was wearing what looks like a backpack, that confirm this game will be an open world exploration with mecha? To be clear, AC6 will feature a mission-based structure to the single player. It's not fully open. It's going to stick with the mission-based structure. In regards to that shot in the trailer in particular, there was a great disaster which was depicted in the trailer, which brought with it enormous changes to the environment. Similar to what you see with an Ice Age, this shot is just a straightforward representation of the world of AC6 and the mecha pilots who have to survive through such dramatic changes. So that's what we're trying to show in that shot. Essentially, in that overlooking, it picks up the gun and it outlooks into the vast wasteland, and then you see the explosion and it's got a backpack. Think of that as, yeah, that's an AC 100%, but it's a vendor AC. He's going around picking up parts, seeing what he can salvage so he can sell it to you. And the fact that they're going to stick to a mission-based structure is really good. That is Armored Core in its purest form. It needs to stay that way. As much as I would love an open world type mecha game like that, I don't think Armored Core is the one to do it with. I think there's other options we could probably get, and it doesn't have to be FromSoftware to do it, but I definitely think there's an opportunity there for that kind of game. But for Armored Core, it needs to stay that mission structure. It just makes sense, and it's better to still tell the story. Will it once again reset the story, or will it continue from Armored Core 5? Yes, we'd like to think this as a completely fresh new story. There are no direct links with previous games in terms of continuing story. This is a brand new setting and a brand new story for players to enjoy. Duly confirmed. Now, this overall, what this could be a whole bunch of things, but one thing to state is not continuing any story from any previous Armored Core. Is it still in the same Armored Core universe? Yes, it is just a different story in general, and is not at all linked with any of them. That's perfectly fine. Do it that way. Because it'll make it so much better not to associate with 4 or 5. Specifically 5. But anyways. Miyazaki-san, you have a long history with Armored Core going back to Last Raven and Armored Core 4, as you already said. How has this series impacted you as a designer and a game developer over the years? It's a difficult question. I haven't actually given a lot of thought, but I was, of course, much more inexperienced back when making Armored Core 4 and 4 Answer, I think on PS3. It was a time when I had to learn a lot in regard to both the technical aspect and the design aspect of game development. So you could really call it my starting point for game development. One thing that hasn't changed is the core competence of Armored Core. Those aspects we touched on earlier, the assembly and piloting of that mech you assembled, this is the core component that is carried through and that we're still very cautious of with these games. Taking the significance of the themes of a particular title, so if it's Armored Core, there's going to be mechs, and discovering what key themes of each subsequent title was, whether that's Dark Souls, Soulsborne, Sekiro, or Bloodborne, Soulsborne. This is something that we've been cautious of as we create these games. I think you'll see these themes and these key development concepts have influenced my games as a designer over the years. A lot of this is straightforward. Not much I can really say there. Pretty much talking, hey, each game has its own key resource or key component, what makes that game itself. Armored Core, the mecha base, designing that mech, going out on missions. Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Sekiro, they each all have their own core concepts that they embody, that you can see. You pop in, someone starts playing that, and you can look and go, okay, this is this, this is this. That's kind of what he was going with. And that, he's grown as a designer over the years, too. What is Armored Core 6's approach to difficulty? I think this one's something everyone is wondering. Of course, with Armored Core 6, what we wanted to focus on was this really intense and tough mecha battles. We generally tried to keep it on the challenging side, but it's not to say that it's a flat difficulty line throughout. Want to have some nice tempo changes and some nice balance to the difficulty and the level of challenge. It can vary depending on the type of mission, the mission type. It depends on the enemies you're coming up against in those missions. Depends on how you want to assemble your mech. But this is one approach we wanted to have, is to have the player decide how they wanted to assemble and how they wanted to approach each mission, and then have this nice balance of level challenge throughout missions and throughout the campaign. Okay, so again, straightforward, but kind of like what he's talking about here is he's wanting, it's not flat, so it's not like base difficulty, hey, it's just this blah blah, this is how difficult it's going to be, or how difficult it's going to be, it's going to have this linear progression up, blah blah. It's not that. What it is here's a mission. It's going to be, the difficulty is going to be there. Let's say that mission's difficulty is 50. And everything that you do, how you choose to approach that mission, how you build your mech, your defenses, your weapons, things like that, that's going to change how that mission is going to be. So instead of being like a difficulty 50, it could be lower, it could be like a 25, or it could go up to like 75, depending on how you build your mech and how you approach it. Which is actually a really good thing, and it's a very strong, and I would say a core concept of Armored Core. Without a doubt, that's a core concept of Armored Core. Because if you go into a mission and everything's got high energy defense and you've got nothing but energy weapons, yeah, that mission's gonna kind of suck for you. Simple as that. But if you go in there with solid weapons and everything's got high energy defense but low solid defense, oh, you're going to start wrecking things. They might still have a good amount of armor, so you're going to have a difficulty spike depending on how you build your AC, how you approach these things. That's a really good thing, and that's a core concept of Armored Core in the aspects 100%. What are some of the lessons you've learned from your work as a designer on Sekiro, and how are you applying them to the difficulty in Armored Core 6? So this is Yamamura's Yamamura's answered the last one too, yeah. I would say that while the severe and intense battles is still very much a focus of Armored Core 6, there's something that carries between our games. The approach to how we handle these and how we design difficulty is actually quite different. You mentioned Sekiro, and the approach there was a very stoic, one-track approach to battle with just the one weapon. And just your resolve as a player. I feel like with Armored Core 6, the approach is quite different, mainly because of the assemble aspect that you have. So your battle really starts in the AC garage when you're deciding which weapon, you're deciding which layout, what performance you want your AC to have in battle, and taking this forward to each encounter, each boss battle. So that's really a part of strategy this time, and I think that affects the difficulty greatly. Again, what I was saying in the previous section, how you approach everything, how you build your AC is going to change the difficulty in this game. So obviously, if you're running a heavy AC, you're gonna have a lot of armor. You're gonna be slower. Might not be a good thing to do because you might have a lot of flyers that you can't hit. Or you go with a very light, fast-paced mech, and you go into a mission that's got heavy hitters that can chunk away armor like it's nothing. You're gonna have a bad time. You're going to die really quickly. That's kind of that approach. But, you swap it around. Hey, you got your very quick, very lightweight mech against a whole bunch of things that are flyers that are quick, but they can't hit you, but you can stay on top of them and hit them. That mission is gonna be way easier. And then when you go into that big, heavy damage type of mission, and you've got that heavy mech, and they hit you and those shells pretty much bounce off of you, yeah, the difficulty is going to change. It's going to be much different depending on how you approach each mission and how you create your mech, how you assemble it, which, again, core concept of Armored Core. So I think that's going to get people early on, but we'll see. Armored Core has had generators and radiators and many, many parts, while Armored Core 6 have even more parts or the same number of parts, and also will have an RPG progression. Yes, in the terms of the types of parts, you can switch around when you're assembling your mech. This is going to be what you're familiar with from past AC games. There will be a wide variety of different parts that you can exchange on different parts of your mech. So the aspect is going to be fully intact in Armored Core 6. Oh my god, can I speak today? This is the general game cycle, though you could consider a type of level up possibly. The general game cycle is declare a mission and you earn money. That money you to buy more expensive weapons and parts for your mech. Now, and also within that, you're tuning these parts and tuning the weapons and tuning your mech to suit your playstyle, changing parameters, changing performance of various parts to your suit and the way that you want to approach each mission in each battle. I think you could call this the equivalent in Armored Core 6. Essentially, yes, there's an RPG aspect, how you adjust everything, and this literally confirms that we're getting stuff. Anyways, next question. In terms of how the mechs actually move and fly, will it be similar to past Armored Core games, or are you seeking to change that for Armored Core 6? Alright. Yes, I think you can imagine something similar to what we've had in previous Armored Core games in terms of how you customize your mech, in terms of mobility, and how you're using that in-game as well. You can tune generators or boosters or improve boosts or flight time or boost height or explosiveness in the boost. These things will all apply in Armored Core 6 as well. This is going back to the point that I lost. Essentially is allowing the customization and everything like that. You're really going to build it's going to be the RPG aspect of how you build your mech and how you go about really making this mech your own and customizing it. Now, I'm going to state this because it's going to happen. There are going to be min-maxers. So if there's going to be some competitive multiplayer action going on, some 1v1s, you're going to go against some sweats. It's going to be how it is, because they're going to min-max things and get super perfect until they find that one guy that just shoots them out of the air every single time because they know how to counter it. Then they go back to the drawing board and create something else. But this is going to just, again, movement's going to be similar to past Armored Cores, meaning it's going to have evolved. It's going to feel smoother. It's going to move smoother. How you're going to customize your AC is going to determine on how your AC moves, which is a good thing. So they definitely have, they're evolving Armored Core more and more, which is good. When I listen to you talk about Armored Core, in so many ways, it feels like a traditional Armored Core game. It has mission-based gameplay. It's focused on customization. I'm curious, how does Armored Core fit into the current library of FromSoftware games? The modern FromSoftware games, I should say, such as Sekiro, Elden Ring, Dark Souls in your mind. How does it fit into the future of FromSoftware in your viewpoint? Yes, I think I see the nuance of this question. I think it's mostly concerned with how the mission-based structure fits into the modern games, and particularly modern FromSoftware games. To answer this, I think player mobility and player ability obviously plays a huge part in how we approach the design of these games. Whether it's Elden Ring or Dark Souls or Armored Core, obviously the assembly aspect comes into that. It doesn't quite apply to the fully open world exploration approach. We had to choose from the outset of designing Armored Core 6 which approach we wanted to go with and where we wanted to put the focus. This time, while there was an aspect of exploration in Armored Core 6, we wanted to put the focus on the breadth of variety and in assembly and in customizing your own mech and really feeling as if you're piloting that mech that you've carefully put time into. I don't know that word. Sorry, I don't English well. We felt that the mission-based structure was a benefit for this because it allows you to choose and customize before each sortie. The very least, the tempo, the pace at which the player is able to move across the world and traverse the map. This is a very big aspect in how you approach this design. I think one of the big appeal points to previous AC games is having the freedom to choose on how you're going to move across the map and how your choices are going to affect your mobility or your ability once you're actually in the level. This is the format we want to choose this time, and this is where we want to put our focus. Oh, and that's it. So essentially, he's sitting there saying, everyone's gone, well, it's, how does this relate to Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Sekiro, these extremely hard games? And probably more Elden Ring, Dark Souls versus Sekiro, which was more like Tenchu, a rebirth of Tenchu. And him saying, them asking, how does this fit into the FromSoftware kind of narrative, or, how FromSoftware is approaching this, and him telling it how it is. We're taking the same care we do with everything we've created, and what makes Armored Core, we're keeping, and we're just modernizing it. So it's a really good way of seeing they're telling people, shut up. This is a game a lot of people are waiting for, and we want to make sure that those people who are waiting for it, those fans that have been begging us for it, are going to get the game they want, and that other people are going to follow because they're going to be so excited, can't wait to show it and share it with all their friends, and streamers and content creators are going to create content for this that is going to pull more people in. And I really think that's kind of what they're showing. Elden Ring definitely showed us that you could have a game that is over the top, really open, and great difficulty, but you can still make the game easier in a sense on how you approach it, using summons, things like that. They had great aspects in it, and I think Elden Ring did an amazing job with that. And with what they're talking about in this interview about Armored Core 6, it seems like they're taking that care of Armored Core and making sure core concepts are there. Yeah, it's going to be definitely something that people are going to enjoy and like. But they're, again, it's going to keep the core concepts. And yes, there's going to be a difficulty spike in this game. Like I said, depending on how you build your ACs, depending on how you approach your missions in these games, they always tend to be more difficult or less difficult, depending on how you approach them and how you build those ACs. Simple as that. All right, everyone. And that's it for this interview with Miyazaki and Yamamura. If you guys, again, want to check it out, go to IGN. They have the full interview here with a little bit of the fluff in the beginning that I skipped over because I've already done this recording like 3 times and I don't want to do more of it. But anyways, so if you want to check out the interview, again, IGN, I will have the link to the previous interview where they kind of hinted that we were getting Armored Core 6 prior. And of course, you guys are looking for more Armored Core information. Well, I'm going to be one of those channels you can come to, because anytime there is something up for Armored Core 6, I am going to be all over that. And we're going to talk more and more about Armored Core 6. I'm also doing a Armored Core count up over there on Twitch. I know YouTube, you don't like me saying that all the time. But if you guys want to check out that and see all the previous games and how they're played, you can always go over there and check that out. But anyways, guys, if you like this kind of content, you want to see more of it, consider subscribing. Also, don't forget to like and share this with a friend. I'm hanging off. I will see you guys all later. Till then, take care.